My name's Deborah Murphy and I'm the CEO of RDA Illawarra. That's Regional Development Australia in the Illawarra. And today we're speaking with our guest, Stephen Jones. Stephen is the member for Whitlam and he was first elected to federal parliament in 2010 in the Illawarra. And I've had the pleasure of working with Stephen for a decade now. So welcome, Stephen.
A decade seems like a long time, but only seems like yesterday in most respects since I stood up and gave my first speech. Great to be here, Deb. Welcome to you, your members and your listeners and viewers.
Great, thanks. So it's May 2020 and we've been in a COVID state for a couple of months now. And in the Illawarra, there's an estimate going around that we've lost over 8,000 jobs. So at the moment, we're turning our minds to having discussions with important people such as yourself on what does economic recovery look like for us and what could the future state be and what should we be doing now about economic recovery for our region?
Great. Okay, let me deal with that last question first. I think right now, when the public health restrictions are in place, it's crucial that we provide the right sort of support to households, to workers, individuals and to businesses to ensure we can just get through the emergency phase, which is pretty much what we're in right now. So that's involved increasing the level of New Start, now known as JobKeeper. It's involved providing liquidity for businesses and wage subsidy arrangements for businesses, all of them which I've provided strong support for, even where I thought there were some things we'd have done differently or we'd have designed differently. Broadly speaking, let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. It's really critical that we get government and institutional support out there for the region where people are doing it tough. So that's the first phase. But I think as many a wise sage will say, never let a crisis go to waste. There's a focus now on what the economy, what society should look like through the recovery phase. And there's a bunch of things we can predict, a bunch of things we can't predict. I suspect with large swathes of the workforce having spent a good amount of time working from home, there's a bunch of things that are going to go on. Respect for teachers and what they do in the classroom is going to go up. People will start to reassess in Wollongong that 4.5 hours a day they might spend on a train travelling to Sydney, and they'll start to be thinking and discussing with their bosses about ways they might be able to work from home a bit more often. I think pulling in the other direction, they'll be missing the social interaction that the workplace creates. So I think there's going to be some pretty dynamic changes in that area. I think we've also got to look immediately at those groups of workers and businesses that are going to need some immediate support. I don't think there's going to be a quick snapback. Let's face it, there were some problems before the crisis that haven't gone away that we need to address. And I think they're the things that we should be turning our minds to. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think is most important or critical in terms of our recovery, given, it's going to take us some time, it could take us years is what the punters are saying. And we're not there yet. Arguably we're sort of still in survival mode, but we're trying to turn our minds to recovery. What do you think is critical and important for our economy to recover?
A couple of things. So the collapse in aggregate demand means that people aren't spending money, and lack of confidence in what the future is going to look like means the businesses are reluctant to invest. So we've got to put in place some programs which are going to turn that around at the aggregate level. We often turn to infrastructure, building things. It's an instinctive response. Things slow down, let's build stuff, because that's something that it's tangible. And I think we should be looking at that. And I'm encouraging our councils, our local business leaders to be looking at some region-wide economic projects that are worthy of investment. I'd encourage people to have something at every level in the Bay Marie. What are some big region-wide projects that we might want to move to the front burner? But also, what are some things that are smaller projects that we could bring online pretty quickly? I think there's good in that. The building, construction, housing sector is generally at the front line of a slowdown. And we're going to see that. A massive slowdown in new housing work going on. There's been a slowdown in other areas in construction as well. However, the weakness in just pulling down on the construction lever is twofold. It's big and it's lumpy, and sometimes very difficult to get moving quickly, and people need jobs now. The second thing that I'd point to as a weakness is that it's more male-oriented. And if we look at the industries that have been in the front line, that have been the bumper bar, if you like, of the economic slowdown, it's been the services sector, it's been accommodation, it's been hospitality, it's been retail. And a lot of those areas are going to have persistent problems. International tourism isn't going to be available to us for some time to come. So we've got to be looking at programs that provide support and labour, not just to the sector, but to those workers in those sector. We're going to have to look at ways to redeploy them into other jobs. And I don't think building and construction is going to be the answer for them. It's an answer for some things. It's not an answer to them. So stuff that I'm attracted to is government looking at some programs which are labour intensive, which are likely to pick up those workers who've been working in the services sector, focusing on the problems with young people. Yeah. Young people have been the bumper bar, I've got to say, because they're highly employed in those areas, and looking at ways that we can get some programs in place that provide jobs for those groups. I'm attracted to stuff which is likely to have broad social support, you can get up and running quickly, and is going to be dispersed throughout the country. So some ideas that I've been floating. What about feral pest eradication or feral weed eradication programs? Everyone says this is something we should do something about. Yeah. But there's always a big cost to it. It would be broadly supported. It's something you could get up and running relatively quickly. But it's something would be geographically dispersed, whether it's feral weeds, whether it's deer or other problems that are endemic within the Illawarra. That's something we could look at. Also attracted at us using this as an opportunity to focus perhaps on, some areas that we all understand as a societal problem. So what can we do in an area, a big push into housing and homelessness, a big push into doing some stuff around domestic violence and family abuse. So there's three ideas, plus the traditional ones. Let's look at some things that we could do. And then finally, it's not as if everything was perfect before the crisis. And it's not as if we actually want to wind the clock back in every respect as well. So let's use this as an opportunity to say, well, where are some things that we've been talking about in terms of transformation for a long time that we need to accelerate? Energy is an obvious one. Manufacturing transformation is an obvious one for the region. So there's some areas that we can and should be looking at in that as well.
Okay, great. So anything in final, or one thing that you think would prepare us well for the future, given it's going to be pretty difficult times ahead?
Look, I don't think it's, when people ask what is the one thing, I think the one thing is lots of little things that are going to be needed. It's been tough. This is the third recession that I've been through in my lifetime. And when you're in the middle of them, sometimes you can seem a bit breathless, and how are we ever going to get to the other side of this? We do. I have great faith in the resilience of the people of the Illawarra. We have very strong institutions, we have good leadership, and I have faith in our ability to work together to bring all of the sectors of the community together, to latch upon a common vision and to advocate that where it matters. So I think leadership, strong voices, simple and common message is what is needed most of all from the Illawarra region as we find our way out of this.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end, and look forward to working with you on finding our way out of this. And thank you very much for joining us today, Stephen.
My pleasure.